Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Thinkorswim. And in this series, in the past, I've covered my top 5 tools for options traders, my top 5 tools for long-term investors, and I think the stock traders might be there in the back saying, hey there, what about us? So today, we're going to be going through Coach Cam's top 5, not investors, but top 5 Thinkorswim tools for stock traders. Should be an interesting discussion. These are just tools that might be potentially beneficial for the streamlining of an approach, providing maybe broader insights about the markets. A lot to cover. Before we get to any of those tools, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody who's out there chatting in YouTube already. Hello there, Ricebird and Jaron and Robert, Greg, Will, Eva, everybody else. Jack, great to see you. But everybody, thanks for joining us week after week. I always do appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. If you are here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the live stream is concluded, enjoy the recording. It's a great way to watch these webcasts. But be aware that you're invited to join us in the live stream if you would like to be here. This is a Wednesday webcast series. We kick things off promptly at 2 o'clock Eastern time. We'd love to have you here. But I also want to say that my very good friend Connie Hill's hanging out in chats here. She's going to be addressing any questions that I can't get to during the natural flow of the presentation. Thanks for having my back there, Connie. And Connie and I would like to issue an invitation to everybody watching. Follow us on social media. You can find Connie and me on X. You can follow Connie there at Connie Hill CS. You can follow me on X at Cameron May CS. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. So you just go to linkedin.com/in/Cameron May CS. That's how you'd find me. But whether you reply to me on X or you reply to me on LinkedIn, I try to reply right back to you, and it allows for more interaction. It's not always available when the camera's off. All right, but let's get right into this discussion. As we do, of course, we need to first consider the risks associated with trading and investing. Risks are real, so bear this important information in mind. All corporate and issuer names and market data shown are for illustrative purposes only and are not a recommendation, offer to sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Options carry a high level of risk and are not suitable for all investors. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research. And investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. And as I mentioned at the outset, today is going to be sort of Coach Cam's top 5 Thinkorswim tools for stock traders. Now, I'm not going to be giving, suggestions. Everybody should use this magical indicator. I think that each trader has their own preferred approach to investing, but I do want to provide some additional tools that might streamline that approach, whatever it might be. And I think that there are going to be some interesting discoveries here for just about everybody watching. So let's go right to the Thinkorswim desktop platform. And the first thing that I wanted to discuss is sort of getting that broader context. For some stock traders, before they ever place or plan that stock trade, they'll first look to see what the markets have been doing. So maybe they bring up an index like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or something like that. And that can provide some context regarding what has happened over the course of the last several months or the last year, or we could even extend that out to a longer term time frame. But there are other questions that can arise, other contextual questions. For example, we are right now heading into the holidays, and it's a natural question to ask oneself, hey, I wonder how the markets typically do during the holiday season, or maybe I've heard the markets tend to be bullish during the holidays. Is that accurate, or has it been historically accurate? Well, there's a tool that some of you have already seen me demonstrate before. Maybe you've seen me mention these in social media on those platforms that I just mentioned already. But there's a tool known as the Seasonality tool. And so I want to apply that to the S&P 500. But as we do that, I also want to throw out the reminder that seasonality tendencies can also be observed through using this tool on individual stocks. So, Ricebird, do you want to see the magical tool? I don't have that one, right? Yeah, but let's have a look at this seasonality tool. So I'm going to come up here to our chart style, and I'm going to switch this from just a standard candlestick chart let's switch this up to a seasonality chart. So this is really looking for that broad context. And if you haven't seen this chart before, what we're immediately presented with is a green line and a red line. The green line shows us how the S&P has done year to date up to this point. So it really starts back here January 1st and then proceeds through to wherever we happen to be at this moment, which happens to be right now, November 12th. So that's how the year 2025 has gone so far year to date. By default, down here, we're now seeing how 2024 went. So already some historical context available there. We might be able to see, are there repeats? Do there tend to be repeating patterns in the way that the S&P is behaving right now compared to how it behaved last year? Maybe at times there are, maybe at times there are not. But what might be more insightful to our trader is what has been a longer term historical tendency. Not just, maybe what's happened in the summer of 2024 and the summer of 2025, but what's happened in a typical summer over the last 20 years. Or what's happened in a typical holiday season if we're looking ahead over the last 20 years. So let's get a longer term view here. I'm going to switch my chart time frame to a 20-year, one-day chart. So it's going to show us each day over the course of a typical 12-month period over the last 20 years, but that's actually being compressed now down here at the bottom of the chart. So we need to come up to the upper right. Let's switch this to manual, which allows us to zoom in down on this little compressed historical performance chart. And now we're left with, this is now a chart. It's not last year, it's not this year, it's an average year over the last 20 years. And then we can maybe just look at what the present day is. So let's go right now to November 12th. That's about right here. And we might observe that in an average year, there's actually been that historical tendency over the last 20 years for stocks to climb. And maybe for a trader who's trying to get some context for the sorts of trades that they're planning, this might be important. Now, is this a guarantee that because this has been an average tendency over the last 20 years, that means that that's the way 2025 is going to go? No, it doesn't mean that. But still, to some traders, they like to have that sort of context. Now, I also want to point out, as I mentioned earlier, this is not available just for major indices, but we can also do this if we were to switch this over to, let's say, Apple. Maybe our trader's question is not how the S&P has done. Maybe they're planning to trade a stock. And I'm going to be using Apple as today's example trade scenario. But they may wonder, as they're planning to buy a specific stock at maybe a given time of year, has this historically been a good time of year to be taking a bullish position on this particular equity? So I just switched this up, and this is retained by default, that 20-year view. It's still compressed down here at the bottom, and I can zoom in on that again. We come up here. These are our right or our y-axis settings by default. It's just going to use a typical auto expansion there. Let's change this to manual so that we can manually view just the bottom portion of our chart with a click and a drag or a highlight. And we can look to see, well, what has Apple done typically at this time of year? Apple's one of those stocks that's had a pretty good run on average over the last 20 years. And that includes a pretty strong tendency here the last couple of months of each year. Not every year, but on average, bullish time of year. And that has extended into about the second week of February. Now, from February into March, that has not been a strong time of year for Apple on average. But then it historically has started to climb again. Pretty extended run moving into fall again. So for a trader who's maybe trying to add that little bit of polish to a technical approach to a chart, it may help to get that longer term historical average perspective, recognizing, again, it's not a guarantee of performance in this particular scenario. All right, so that's kind of top tool number one. You may agree or disagree with these. That's okay. Lots of fantastic tools that I could have selected on thinkorswim. So I just wanted to maybe provide a pretty broad spectrum of potential tools. But let's come back up here. Let's switch our time frame back to a 1-year view. Let's switch our chart style back from a seasonality chart to a standard chart. And there we are, back to our familiar Apple candlestick chart. Now, let's step it down a level in granularity. So the last discussion, the last tool that we just learned was for a broad perspective. Maybe our trader wants a little bit more targeted information, but still staying relatively broad. What about sector strength? Zach says, can this be saved as a study or a style? It could be. Yes, I didn't do it here. However, Zach, spoiler alert, guess where I'm headed? That's going to be tool number 4, or top tool number 4. All right, but in any case, let's step it down a level in granularity. We just looked at the broad markets. Now let's see what tools might be available to a trader who's looking for strength in given sectors. Now, just because there's current strength doesn't mean that strength is going to persist, but there is a watch list constructed and maintained, published by thinkorswim. So there's nothing special that the trader needs to do to set this up, but to find the different sectors that comprise the S&P 500, we can come over to our watch list in the left column. Right now, I'm looking at the 500 companies, or 500 or so companies that make up the S&P 500. Let's switch this, sticking with the public watch list, but I'm going to go to the Sector Indices Watchlist. So this is now just 11 symbols. These are the 11 sectors that make up the S&P 500. And our trader can now navigate among those by clicking on the symbols if they've linked their watch list to the chart. So we can use that linking mechanism right here. If it's unlinked, we just choose the same color for the watch list as next to the symbol here in our chart, and that links the watch list to the chart, so that as we click through those, it's going to be showing us a series of new charts here, but it's not exactly obvious what those charts are by default. What we're seeing here are the different sectors and their performance over the last 12 months, since this is a one-year chart. But if I click on this, that's a nice chart, kind of going sideways, but which sector is it? But we can minimize this left column. Here's one of the nice features of linking. If I minimize that left column, I can then just hit the down arrow on my keyboard to navigate, well, the down and the up arrow to navigate back and forth among the different sectors here. But if I minimize that left column, I can also see which sector we're dealing with. So this is the energy sector, and as I hit the down arrow, I can see the next one is materials, and the next one is industrials, and the trader might look at the trend of those sectors to see where is the apparent strength. Or, let's see, somebody just says, how can we label each of these? This is another way that the trader might quickly see which sector we're dealing with here. And that is to change or customize the columns that we're seeing. Or it might not be terribly meaningful to look at the market capitalization for the different sectors. There really isn't a published market capitalization for the sectors, nor might it be terribly informative to see what the current price is, since we're not investing directly in these sectors. So instead, let's click on the little customize tool here, the gear icon, and we're going to customize these columns. Let's remove market cap. Let's remove the last price and replace those with description. So I think user YL3GZ2XU7X. This might have been what you'd seen demonstrated before. Well, let's add that description as a custom column. Click OK. And now we can just see here which those sectors are. Notice I don't even have to see them on the chart. I can see this one is energy, this one's materials, that one's industrials, and so on. And one of those, if we click on information technology, our trader might note that information technology has been among those sectors that's really been participating, and possibly not just participating in, but primarily driving the performance of the S&P 500. You can see that this has risen from a low of 3,300 to a high of almost 6,100. That nearly is a 100% increase at a time the S&P has gone up about 35%. So that is maybe cool tool number 2, or top tool number 2, that might give some insight to our trader regarding not just seasonal tendencies for strength or weakness for for broad indices, but also see which sectors seem to be the ones that seem to be strongest or weakest over whatever selected time frame the trader might prefer. I'm just using 1 year as an example. So we've looked at markets, we've looked at sectors. Let's get back to that individual stock. Let me load up Apple and show maybe some tools. This is to go to the earlier question. I said it was going to be number 3. It's actually I said it was going to be number 4. It's actually number 3 that we're going to talk about. Zach had asked about saving as a style. What in the world is that, Zach? You know something that some people don't. Traders, once they've set up, and I can't speak for every trader out there, but among those technical traders in our audience who use charts for the planning and placing of trades, there tend to be different preferences among the different traders for how they like to set that chart up. And even with the same trader, they may have multiple different chart setups that they use for different purposes. Maybe they have a portion of their portfolio that they manage for very short-term trades. Maybe they have a portion of their portfolio that's more longer term. Maybe they trade stocks using one chart and options using another chart setup. But in any case, those customizations that we make to a chart can actually be saved for quick reference, for quick retrieval later. So here's what I want to talk about. This is what I'm talking about. Right now, we're looking at Apple, and we see this is a 1-year chart that just has candlesticks displayed. It's showing some particulars about that stock. We have what we call corporate events. Those are dividends and earnings announcements indicated by these icons here. We even have volume displayed down at the bottom. All of these make up the characteristics of what we'd call a chart style. That's a very specific style of chart. All of these might be characteristics of the chart that a trader prefers to see. So we can save all of those by saving the style. Now, there's another function that allows us to save separately any technical studies that we add to a chart. I commonly get the question, what's the difference between saving the style of chart and saving a study set? Well, a study set saves any technical studies like moving averages or MACD or stochastic, different oscillators that we might add to a chart. The style essentially saves everything else. All right. So the way that I like to describe this is that there can be customizations made to the chart by, yes, adding studies using this icon, changing the chart settings using the gear icon. The time frame contributes to the style, as well as just the basic style itself, whether we're dealing with a candle or a line or a bar chart, Heikin-Ashi candles, that sort of thing. And all of those customizations can be saved all at once. So here's what I want to do. Let's save this current style. All right, so I'm going to come up here to Style, and let's save style. We're going to give it a name. Well, how about we just call this 1 year candles with volume. That'll work. We can call these whatever we want. If I click Save, and then I make some other customizations to our chart, you'll see in just a moment, I'll be able to load back to this set of characteristics very quickly. But now I'm going to make some customizations. So first thing, how about we add a technical study? For some traders, they like to have an indication of price trend. Probably the most commonly used technical study out there. It's just my personal observation. I don't have data to back this up, but it seems to be accurate. Possibly the most commonly used technical indicator is a simple moving average. So let's load up a simple moving average to our chart. And let's just say maybe our trader is looking for a 50-period moving average as an indication of trend, maybe as price floors and price ceilings, a number of different ways that a moving average might be used. Let's apply that to our chart as our first customization. So I've added a study. But what if we also customize our chart settings? Maybe we don't need to see volume. Maybe our trader doesn't actually need to see the corporate actions here. So those are going to be changes to our equities tab, where we can choose to not show that volume subgraph. We can not show the corporate actions. Let's apply that to our chart. So you can see we're starting to wind up with a significantly different chart. Maybe our trader also likes to use a different time frame. in some circumstances. So let's switch this over to maybe a 3-month chart. And finally, maybe they just use a different style of chart altogether. Some traders like candles, others like line charts or bar charts. How about we switch our chart type from a bar? So you see all those customizations that we just made. And our trader, maybe they like to use both the candle chart on the 1 year, maybe the bar chart on the 3-month with the moving average applied for whatever their purposes might be. But let's save all of these customizations now. I'm going to click on Style. Let's save style, and let's call this a 3-month bars with simple moving average and no volume. Again, I like to use names that just pretty much describe exactly what I did to the chart. So before I ever select it, I know exactly what it's going to be loading up. But one important distinction I'm going to make here, one important step I'm going to take is check the box that says include patterns and study set. Importantly, we've added a technical study, and I want to include that in what I'm saving. So now let's click Save. And now, if I were to set up, let's say 2 charts at the same time, let's come up here to our grid. Let's choose a grid of 2 different charts. Well, our first chart may be that bar chart with the moving average applied. Our second chart, let's blow this up to full screen size. I'm going to come up here to the little menu in the upper right-hand corner, and let's maximize this chart, or it's commonly called on thinkorswim this cell. So here's this chart. Maybe let's move over to General Electric. And if we need to, we can load up our default bar, our candlestick chart. So we can go up to our style. We can load the 1-year candles with volume, and you can see that looks just like that other chart that we had going on Apple. If we wanted to, we could switch that style now as well to our 3-month bars with simple moving average and no volume. And then if we want to move back and forth between those charts, here's Apple, here's General Electric, and you can see how this could potentially save the trader a lot of time. Traders tend to be tinkerers. They tend to have lots of different setups that they like to have, and this is a quick way to set those setups and navigate among those. All right, let's simplify this again. Let's go back up here, set this to just 1 chart. Let's change our style back to our 1-year candles with volume. There we go. I think that's going to be a little bit more comfortable on the eyes of most of the people watching this webcast. And let's move on to top tool number 4. So seasonality chart number 1, looking at the sector indices watch list number 2. We've saved styles number 3. So we've kind of been progressing down sort of a checklist for some traders. Look at a broad view, a more targeted sector view, then to an individual stock. And now let's say that our trader has a preferred technical approach to placing a trade, but they're struggling to find trades that fit that approach. Okay, somebody says, how does a drawing set differ? So it's a good question. So we just saved all of the characteristics of a chart, but a drawing set is when we make a series of drawings on a chart, and we want to save those for later reference. So for example, maybe I drew this apparent symmetrical triangle on Apple, and I want to save that. I can come down to my drawing set. We can save that as a new drawing set. I might call this my Apple triangle. So this is not saving the candlesticks, it's not saving the moving average, it's saving the drawing itself. So if I switch this back to default and I erase that, let's just remove those drawings. Let's clear that whole drawing set. I need to retrieve that drawing. It's going to be right there. There we go. And you can see on Apple, I have a number of different other drawing sets that I've saved, and this is for other webcast series. So for example, we were trading the Gator oscillator, and I had a drawing for that, just highlighting an entry on that day. We also have a trade going on in a different account for a vertical spread. So I have a different set of drawings for that vertical spread. There you go. Does that help? All right, let's go back to our default. Nice clean chart. But now let's set up a hypothetical scenario where a trader, maybe they have a preferred technical approach to trading stocks, but as they go manually look through stocks, it's kind of tough finding that technical approach. And I'll just use Apple as an example. Let's add maybe one more technical indicator here. I'm going to go up here to our little flask icon, and let's add the MACD histogram. And for this trade scenario, let's say that our trader prefers for the price of Apple to be above its 50-period moving average as a possible confirmation of trend, but they also like to see a near-term signal of momentum strength. And maybe that is for their MACD, a common signal on the MACD is to watch for it to fall below zero and then to rise back up above that zero line. In other words, going from negative to positive, right? And if I zoom in here closely enough, this is going to take some squinting, but you see that green histogram bar right down here at the bottom? We just edged up above the zero line. Well, that's looking like a current signal according to that definition on Apple. But I wonder what other great big companies out there might be generating a similar signal right now. So DCW says is there a way to toggle through saved chart styles without having to go through the drop-down menus? Well, if we load up several different charts, you saw the toggle that I had using the arrows, which can take it from chart to chart. But navigating through the styles has to be accessed through one or the other of the menus. We can either do the menu up here, or you can right-click on the chart and load your style right there. Got to be parked somewhere. There you go. But let's say we want to find similar signals to what we're maybe seeing here on Apple. Well, this brings us to maybe our top tool number 4, which is going to be what are called study filters, technical filters in the scan tools on thinkorswim. Now, this one is only available on the live platform of thinkorswim. So I already have that loaded. I've logged into an example live account, and you can always see when I'm talking about a live account in my demonstrations because I use the black background for that. Now, this is just a fake live account, but in any case, it has the functionalities of a live account. And included in that is this scan feature known as a study filter, which allows us to look for technical studies behaving in specific ways. All right, so I'm going to go to the scan tab here, and let's add a couple of pre-qualifiers here, at least one. Apple's a great big company. Maybe our trader has a preference for trading just the biggest stocks out there. So how about one of these default stock categories? Let's look for market capitalizations of at least, let's say, $100 billion. Sounds like a lot of money. There are actually quite a few companies out there. There are at least $100 billion when we're looking for market capitalization. This filter uses increments of millions of dollars. So if I put in a 100,000, that is literally 100,000 million, or in other words, 100 billion, right? So let's set that as a minimum size for market capitalization. It looks like there are 362 companies that meet that criteria. And let's close that out, the rest of those stock filters out. And what we're going to do here is look for, among those 362 $100 billion companies, how many of those companies might have their price above their 50-period moving average and also generating a MACD entry signal as defined as going from negative to positive right now today. So first thing we'll do, let's put in a study filter. Let's add a filter. I'm going to go to study, where we're looking for, let's look for the MACD to be going from negative to positive. So I'm going to use one of the default study filters, which is going to be a crossover study. The MACD crossing over from negative to positive. So we're going to go to crossover, MACD histogram crossover, not positive to negative, but from negative to positive, right? And that will actually look for that signal. So that's check for technical study number one. The second one, though, is a little bit more precise. We need price above, specifically, not crossing over, but just being above the 50-period moving average right now. So we're going to add a second study filter. And in this case, we're going to do a custom study filter. And you'll see me using this fairly frequently because traders have all sorts of different ways that they define what they consider to be a signal from a technical study. And this tool allows us to customize that signal. So by default, I got to point out that the tool doesn't know which technical study we intend to use. So it's just going to use the first one in alphabetical order. ADX crossover is default. I'm going to delete that one. And let's add our own custom position or our own custom study, our own custom condition. So what is the condition? Well, specifically, it is price being above our moving average. So we're going to start with price. And let's just use our closing price. We want that to be greater than something. Well, we want it to be greater than our study. Which study? The simple moving average. Let's choose that from our menu. And then, which moving average? We're talking about the 50, so we'll use the 50 for this example. And finally, when do we need that price to be above the 50-period moving average? Right down here, it'll say within 1 bar. If I just phrase that a different way, that's saying we want this study to be, we want the price to be above our 50-period moving average right now, within the current bar. Save. And click OK. And that actually completes our study filter scan. Just as an example, obviously there are tons of other different technical approaches that might be built into this scan tool. I just wanted to show some of the potential power of this scan, but specifically we're looking for $100 billion companies where the MACD histogram has just crossed from negative to positive and price is currently above the 50 simple moving average. And let's click scan and see what we get. And you know what? I was wondering if this might happen. Let me see if Apple disappeared from our list. Looks like it has. You know what that tells me? It doesn't tell me the scan is broken. It tells me what may have just happened while we're talking is that, yep, our histogram has nudged back down below the 0 line. That's interesting. Apple, according to this approach, no longer currently generating a signal. And for that reason, some traders might wait till the close of business before they place their trades, where they're a little bit more confident that the signal is valid. Validity obviously is determined more by what the stock does after the entry than what the signal is at the moment. In any case, you can see if you squint, that is now red. It was green, as I showed just a few minutes ago. So the scan actually did its job. Not broken. It did a great job. So let's look maybe instead at Johnson & Johnson. Let's see if this scan has found us a stock that meets our criteria. Looks like our price is currently above our 50-period simple moving average, so check. Johnson & Johnson is one of those giants of Wall Street. It's a $100 billion company or larger. And look what just happened today. Just moved from negative to positive. It just generated that example MACD signal. So that's that study filter on the Stock Hacker on the thinkorswim scan tab is top tool number 4 for our stock traders out there. All right. Now, top tool number 5 is just finally putting everything into practice. Let's go back to Apple. Let's go back here. Let's simplify things. I'm going to come up here and take our studies off. Let's take off our simple moving average. Let's take off our MACD and just come up with a very basic trade premise. A trader might note on Apple, the stock has had a recent tendency to run up and then pull back, run up and pull back and run up and pull back. And it looks like it may be in the early stages of running up again. Well, in each recent run up, the stock has run up somewhere around $32 before pulling back. It's not exactly that each time, but $32 off of recent lows might take our stock. Let me just draw this in here just to sort of illustrate what I'm talking about. This run up here was about a $32 run up, as was this one there, as was, I believe it was this one right here. Yeah. And let's just say that our trader thinks that maybe we're likely to continue running up. We've already gone up a few dollars, maybe a few dollars more might take us up to the 300 level. Our lows down here being around 268, $32 above that would take us right up to around 300. All right, so maybe our trader is looking to potentially capitalize on that if that occurs. It's a big if. It might not happen, but maybe they want to place a trade, buy the shares right now, and then sell if they get to 300 bucks. Well, that's great if the trade works. It also might not work. So maybe instead, if the stock breaks down below these recent lows and starts pushing down to below recent support, maybe their plan is to take their lumps. That looks like that might be at around 265-ish. So here's the basic plan. Let's say that our trader wants to buy some shares right now and then manage profits, but also manage losses by placing a target order and a stop order at the same time. That takes us to top tool number 5, which is something known as a First Triggers OCO order. We're going to place a buy order that's going to trigger, if it fills, 2 sell orders, one to take profits, another one to take losses. Here's how that might be placed. Let's go to our trade tab. Let's bring up our stock. If it's not already in there, we can just type in the symbol. And I'm going to go to the ask price and right click on that. And this is going to allow us to put in a custom buy order with what's known as an OCO bracket attached. The OCO means one of these orders is going to cancel the other one. One of the sell orders will cancel the other one. If we can get to our profit target, we'll sell, cancel the stop. If the stock falls down to our stop, oops, take our losses and cancel the profit order. So now the trader just needs to calculate how many shares they want to buy. 1 share is $274, 10 shares, about $2,700. Let's do 20 shares for this example. And let's link those orders together. You see a little broken chain link there. I'm going to click on that. That links these together. So when I move on to enter the rest of our trade details, the quantities all match now. 20 shares purchased and lining up to sell 20 shares for a profit or 20 shares for a loss. All right. So now let's just set our additional order details. For this example, I'm going to switch this to a market order, which just means the trader is willing to pay whatever the current market price is. Now, assuming that market order fills, that's our first order. That order, once filled, will trigger 2 other orders to go into effect. And those orders are going to have this distinction known as the OCO order, or one cancels order, but one cancels other attached to them. But one of those orders is going to be our limit order. This is to take our profits. And in this case, we said $300 for this example. And I'm going to make that order good till canceled. So it remains in effect until that order is filled or until it's canceled. And then we also have a stop order. This is going to be meant to manage the trader's losses conceptually. And we'll make that good till canceled. So that completes our First Triggers OCO order. In this case, putting an order to buy, sell at 300, or sell at a stop at 265. That stop order is not a guarantee that we will definitely sell at 265. If the stock falls hard, we could sell for less than that, but it is still intended to be risk mitigation order. All right, so let's just click on confirm and send, and that brings up our order confirmation dialog box. And this is a little reassuring reminder that this is just a paper trade. It's a simulation, not a real trade. But we can still learn important lessons from a practice trade like this. But here we're putting in an order to buy 20 shares of Apple at the current market price. And with market orders, prices can change quickly in fast market conditions, resulting in execution prices that can be different from the quotes displayed at the order entry. So we're not guaranteed, even though it says 274.36, that we don't know that's exactly the price that we're going to pay. And if that order fills, then our 2 sell orders come into effect. And one of those is that stop order. With stop orders, there's no guarantee that the execution price will be equal to or even near the activation price. So just because we have a trigger price at 265 to hopefully stop the bleeding, it's not a guarantee that we will sell for exactly 265, right? There's no commission on this sort of a trade, but there can be on some types of trades. But that's it. We could send this off, and this is where the trader has really sort of defined for themselves and put into practice the entire trade. They've defined when they're entering, when they will take profits, when they will take losses, and they don't have to wait around to see if profits are achieved so they can sell, or wait around to see if losses accrue and they have to sell. All of that is now essentially automated. And time will tell whether we get to the target or whether we fall back to the stop. We could just send that order off. In this case, I'm not going to send that order. I just wanted to demonstrate how it might be created. And with that, we have accomplished what we set out to do. I wanted to go through top 5 thinkorswim tools for stock traders. Now, this is only one coach's perspective, and you've caught me at a specific moment in time, and my view of other tools can certainly change. What sort of tools do you think I might have missed? Go ahead. Leave me a comment on YouTube. What's your favorite tool on thinkorswim that applies to stock trading? Might work that into a future video. In any case, Eva says variations available on thinkorswim never cease to amaze me. A lot of different tools I might have discussed, right? So hopefully some of those were new and useful to you. But it's time for me to let you go. Go enjoy the rest of our webcast. We have a couple more on deck. They're coming right up. But also be aware of all of the educational resources that are available to you free of charge from Schwab Education. First of all, if you haven't subscribed to our Trader Talks channel yet, do that now. You can just go down below the stream, click on subscribe. It only takes a second. It doesn't cost anything. But our Trader Talks channel on YouTube is where we post the recordings of our previous webcasts. So this webcast should be added to the playlist here, unless we run into some little technical glitch. It does happen every once in a blue moon, but it's always possible. But in any case, you can find playlists of previous webcasts right here. You can join our live streams right here, or you can even do a keyword search for items of specific interest. You know, if you're trying to learn more about maybe one of the indicators that I mentioned today, we can just type in that keyword here, and hey, there's using the MACD indicator for short-term stock trades. But another thing that you should be aware of is that you can follow us on social media, and I would actually strongly encourage you to do that. So you can follow Connie and me on X. You can find Connie there at Connie Hill CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. And this is where I can post things like we went through the seasonality chart. What do you know? Just today, I posted a short video for my X followers about that seasonality chart. And if you reply to one of my posts, I try to reply right back to you. But starting just a few weeks ago, you can now also follow me on LinkedIn. So let me show that to you. Here we are on LinkedIn. I stuck with the theme right there. There's just a quick screen capture of the seasonality chart. Now, nice thing about LinkedIn is I can get a little bit deeper into things. So I don't have a character limit here. And if you reply to me here on LinkedIn, I reply right back to you as well. So again, a great place to connect with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just go to linkedin.com/in/Cameron May CS. CS for Charles Schwab. You can just ignore the rest of this URL. That just takes you to a specific point inside my LinkedIn profile. But linkedin.com/in/Cameron May CS, and you found the right guy. All right, everybody, thank you. So RB says, can you repeat the 5 tools? Absolutely. The seasonality chart, sector indices watch list, saving chart styles, study filters, and finally, the First Triggers OCO order type. All right. So hopefully those were helpful to you. I will also put my social media links in my video description for those that are watching on the archives after the fact. So enjoy those. Everybody, thanks for giving me your time today. Thanks to everybody who has already clicked the thumbs up. If you enjoy one of our webcasts, make sure you click that thumbs up button. Yes, it's a applause to your presenter. It feels like a pat on the back to us. We definitely appreciate it. But it also gives our videos a boost in the YouTube algorithm, helps more people find discussions like Coach Cam's top 5 thinkorswim tools for stock traders. All right. And I can see 42 people have already clicked the thumbs up. I saw somebody yesterday said, hey, Cam, you said 61 had clicked the thumbs up and I only see 21. Well, yeah, that figure doesn't actually update automatically. Just hit your refresh button and you'll see all the others giving thumbs up. So everybody, thanks for doing that. Time for me to let you go. Definitely appreciate your time today. I'll look for you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on X and on LinkedIn. But whenever I see you again, until that moment arrives, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.